Have you ever noticed how every few months a new financial headline seems to explode across the internet? One week it's the stock market is about to crash. The next week it's Social Security is running out of money. And then, almost like clockwork, another headline appears saying something like, "Stop contributing to your 401k. It's a scam." Maybe you've seen those videos. Someone stares directly into the camera and says, "The government controls your retirement money." Or they claim, "Your 401k is a trap designed to keep you poor." Those messages spread fast because fear spreads fast. But here's the problem. Fear is rarely a good financial strategy. The truth is far less dramatic, but it's far more useful. A traditional 401k is not a scam. For millions of Americans, it has been one of the most effective wealth-building tools ever created. At the same time, there are situations where contributing less to a traditional 401k or redirecting new savings elsewhere can actually be the smarter move, not because you're afraid, not because of internet rumors, not because somebody posted a scary TikTok video, but because of simple math, because retirement planning isn't about finding one magical account. It's about understanding where your next dollar will work hardest for you. And sometimes that dollar belongs in a traditional 401k. Sometimes it belongs in a Roth account. Sometimes it belongs in a taxable brokerage account. Sometimes it belongs toward paying off debt. Sometimes it belongs in an emergency fund. The goal isn't to blindly follow rules. The goal is to make intentional decisions. And today, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Because if you're asking yourself whether you should stop contributing to your traditional 401k, the better question might be this: given my situation, where should my next dollar go? That question can change everything. Let's dive in. One of the biggest mistakes people make in personal finance is assuming that a good tool is always the right tool. Think about a hammer. A hammer is fantastic when you're trying to drive a nail into wood. But if you're trying to tighten a screw, suddenly that same hammer becomes the wrong tool. The problem isn't the hammer. The problem is the application. The exact same thing applies to retirement accounts. A traditional 401k is an incredible tool, but there are times when it may not be the best destination for every additional dollar you save. Before we talk about those situations, though, let's acknowledge something important. The traditional 401k has helped create an enormous amount of wealth. Many people underestimate just how powerful this account has been. Over the last several decades, ordinary workers have quietly built extraordinary wealth through consistent contributions, employer matches, and long-term investing. Not through market timing, not through day trading, not through chasing hot stocks, simply through patience. Month after month, year after year, decade after decade. That's one reason why so many retirement millionaires were created inside employer-sponsored plans. People often imagine millionaires as entrepreneurs, celebrities, or CEOs. But many retirement millionaires are teachers, engineers, nurses, government workers, managers, accountants, ordinary people who consistently invested a portion of every paycheck. That's the real power of a 401k. It's not exciting. It's not flashy, but it works. The challenge comes when people assume that because something works, it must always be the best option. And that's where planning becomes important. Let's talk about one of the biggest reasons some people eventually reduce traditional 401k contributions. Success. That sounds strange, doesn't it? Most people think saving more automatically solves every retirement problem. In reality, saving aggressively can sometimes create a new set of challenges. Imagine someone who spends 30 or 40 years doing everything right. They maximize their traditional 401k. They receive employer matches. Their investments grow. They stay disciplined during market downturns. They avoid emotional decisions. By retirement, they've accumulated a significant balance. Maybe $1 million, maybe $2 million, maybe even more. At first glance, that sounds perfect. And in many ways, it is. But something interesting starts happening later. The government eventually requires withdrawals from traditional retirement accounts. These required withdrawals are known as required minimum distributions, or RMDs. Many retirees don't think much about RMDs when they're younger. After all, retirement may be decades away, but the impact can be significant. The larger your traditional retirement balance becomes, the larger your required withdrawals may eventually become. And those withdrawals are generally taxable. This creates a situation many people never expected. They spent decades assuming they'd be in a lower tax bracket during retirement. Then retirement arrives, and they discover their taxable income remains surprisingly high. Why? Because retirement income often comes from multiple directions. You may have Social Security, you may have pension income, you may have investment income, you may have part-time consulting work, you may have rental properties. And then, on top of everything else, you have RMDs. Suddenly, the tax picture becomes more complicated. This surprises many retirees because they assume retirement automatically means lower taxes. But retirement doesn't necessarily mean lower taxable income. In fact, for some high savers, the opposite can happen. I've spoken with retirees who were shocked when they realized they had less control over their taxes than expected. They imagined retirement would bring financial simplicity. Instead, they found themselves carefully managing withdrawals, tax brackets, Medicare premiums, and Social Security taxation. That's why many financial planners emphasize something called tax diversification. Tax diversification doesn't mean owning more investments. It means owning different types of accounts that are taxed differently. Think of it like having multiple tools available. When all your retirement savings exist inside one tax bucket, your flexibility becomes limited. When you have multiple tax buckets, you gain options. And options are incredibly valuable. Imagine two retirees. Both have saved diligently. Both have accumulated similar amounts of wealth. But one retiree has nearly all their money inside traditional retirement accounts. The other retiree has money spread across traditional accounts, Roth accounts, and taxable brokerage accounts. Who has more flexibility? The second retiree, every time, because they can choose where withdrawals come from. Need additional income this year? Maybe they pull from a Roth account, want to stay under a certain tax threshold. Perhaps they use taxable assets instead, trying to avoid a Medicare surcharge. They have choices. That flexibility can significantly improve retirement outcomes. This is one reason some high-income savers eventually decide to reduce traditional 401k contributions and direct future dollars elsewhere. Not because traditional accounts are bad, not because they failed. Ironically, it's often because they've worked extremely well. The account has grown so much that future tax planning becomes increasingly important. Now let's talk about another group of people who may want to reconsider where new retirement dollars go. Young professionals. This may be one of the most overlooked opportunities in retirement planning. Imagine you're 25 years old. You're just starting your career. You have decades ahead of you. Your salary is relatively modest compared to where it might be 20 years from now. At this stage, many workers automatically choose traditional contributions because they enjoy receiving a tax deduction today. That deduction feels good. You contribute money. Your taxable income drops. Your tax bill decreases. Simple. But here's what many people fail to consider. What if your tax bracket today is actually the lowest tax bracket you'll ever experience? Think about that. You're young. Your career is just beginning. Your earnings haven't peaked. Promotions are ahead. Raises are ahead. Career growth is ahead. Future income may be dramatically higher. If that's true, then paying taxes now may actually be a bargain. In other words, today's tax bill could be the cheapest tax bill you'll ever receive. That's where Roth contributions often enter the conversation. With a Roth account, you pay taxes up front. You don't receive the deduction today, but qualified withdrawals later can be tax-free. For workers whose earnings are expected to rise substantially over time, this can be incredibly powerful. The math isn't always obvious at first. Many people focus only on today's deduction, but retirement planning requires looking decades into the future. And sometimes the smartest move is willingly paying a smaller tax bill today in exchange for avoiding a much larger tax bill later. This is especially true for ambitious professionals. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, business owners, executives, technology professionals, people who reasonably expect their income to increase significantly throughout their careers. For them, a Roth contribution during early earning years can be one of the most valuable financial decisions they ever make. The key lesson here is simple. Your current tax bracket matters. Your future tax bracket matters. And understanding the difference between those two numbers can dramatically influence where your next retirement dollar belongs. Unfortunately, most people never think about it. They simply select an option during enrollment and continue making the same choice for decades. That's not planning. That's autopilot. And retirement planning deserves more attention than autopilot. Because every dollar you save today is creating consequences that may not appear for 30 or 40 years. The sooner you recognize that, the more flexibility you'll have later. And flexibility, as we'll continue discussing, may be one of the most valuable assets a retiree can possess. Now let's move beyond taxes for a moment and talk about something even more important: financial stability. Because before you can build wealth, you need to protect yourself from life's inevitable surprises. And life will surprise you. not might, will. A car breaks down. A roof starts leaking. A family member needs help. A medical bill arrives unexpectedly. A job disappears. A recession hits. These things happen every single day to ordinary people. Yet many workers continue funneling every available dollar into retirement accounts while neglecting their short-term financial foundation. That can become a dangerous mistake. I know this isn't the most exciting topic in personal finance. People love discussing investment returns. They love talking about millionaire portfolios. They love debating which ETF is best. But very few people get excited about emergency funds. And that's unfortunate because emergency funds are often the reason successful long-term investors stay successful. Think about it this way. Imagine two investors. Both contribute diligently to retirement accounts. Both invest in similar funds. Both have similar incomes. But one has 6 months of expenses saved in cash. The other has almost no liquid savings. Then an unexpected financial emergency arrives. Who is more likely to stay invested? Who is more likely to avoid panic? Who is more likely to continue following their long-term plan? The person with the emergency fund every single time? That's because liquidity creates stability, and stability creates confidence. One of the biggest myths in personal finance is that every extra dollar should automatically go toward retirement. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it isn't. If you're carrying high-interest credit card debt, your next dollar may be better spent eliminating that balance. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, your next dollar may belong in an emergency fund. If you're preparing to buy a home within the next few years, your next dollar may belong in a down payment fund. These aren't failures. These aren't signs that you're not committed to retirement. These are signs that you're building a strong financial foundation. Because retirement planning isn't just about maximizing returns. It's about creating a life that can withstand uncertainty. And uncertainty is part of the human experience. I've seen people obsess over maximizing retirement contributions while simultaneously carrying thousands of dollars in credit card debt, charging 20% interest. That math rarely works. I've seen people contribute aggressively to retirement accounts while having virtually no emergency savings. Then the first unexpected expense arrives, and suddenly they're borrowing money or selling investments at the worst possible time. That's not financial strength. That's financial fragility. And retirement success requires strength. So if you're wondering whether you should stop contributing additional dollars to a traditional 401k, one important question is this. Have you built enough financial flexibility outside of retirement accounts? If the answer is no, then redirecting some savings may be completely reasonable. Again, notice the theme. We're not saying retirement accounts are bad. We're saying priorities matter. Sequence matters. Timing matters. The order in which you build your financial life matters. And sometimes the smartest move is creating stability first. Once stability exists, investing becomes easier. Staying invested becomes easier. Sleeping at night becomes easier. And that's worth a lot. Now let's discuss another situation where reducing traditional 401k contributions can make sense. Early retirement. This is becoming increasingly popular. More people today are asking a different question than previous generations. Instead of asking, when can I retire? They're asking, how soon can I gain financial independence? That's a fascinating shift, because financial independence isn't necessarily about never working again. It's about having choices. It's about waking up in the morning knowing work is optional rather than mandatory. It's about having control over your time. And for many people, that's the ultimate form of wealth. But early retirement creates a unique planning challenge. Traditional retirement accounts were largely designed around traditional retirement ages. For decades, the assumption was simple. Work until you're 60s, retire. Begin accessing retirement savings. But what happens when someone wants to retire at 50? Or ate o fear-a? Or fear-mongering? Suddenly, the timeline changes. The gap between retirement and unrestricted retirement account access becomes much larger. This is where taxable brokerage accounts often become incredibly valuable. Now, brokerage accounts don't receive the same tax advantages as retirement accounts. You generally invest after-tax dollars. Dividends may be taxable. Capital gains may be taxable. There's more tax drag along the way. At first glance, that sounds like a disadvantage. But here's what brokerage accounts provide: freedom, complete flexibility, no age restrictions, no early withdrawal penalties, no complicated rules determining when you can access your own money. If you retire at 50 and need funds at 51, they're available. If you need money at 52, they're available. If you need money at 53, they're available. That flexibility can become invaluable. Many early retirees intentionally build large taxable brokerage accounts because they understand something important. A retirement plan should align with the life you're actually trying to create, not the life someone else assumes you'll have. If your goal is financial independence at 50, then your saving strategy should support that goal. It doesn't mean abandoning retirement accounts. Far from it. In fact, most successful early retirees use multiple account types simultaneously. They build traditional retirement accounts. They build Roth accounts. They build brokerage accounts. They create multiple sources of future income. And that's exactly why they succeed. Because flexibility creates resilience. Imagine entering retirement with only one source of accessible funds. Now imagine entering retirement with several. Which situation feels safer? Which situation provides more options? Which situation allows you to adapt when circumstances change? The answer is obvious. Retirement isn't just about accumulating money. It's about creating choices, and choices require flexibility. Let's now turn our attention to something that receives far less attention than it deserves: fees. The reality is that not all 401k plans are created equal. Some plans are outstanding. Low-cost index funds, strong investment options, reasonable administrative costs, transparent pricing. These plans can be fantastic wealth-building vehicles, but unfortunately, not every employer offers a plan like that. Some plans are expensive, very expensive. And the frustrating part is that many employees don't even realize it. The fees often operate quietly in the background. You don't receive a giant bill every month. Nobody sends you an invoice demanding payment. Instead, the costs slowly reduce your investment returns over time, year after year, decade after decade. And that's what makes them dangerous. Let's imagine two investors. Both invest the same amount. Both earn the same market return. Both stay invested for decades. But one investor pays significantly higher fees. What happens? The difference compounds. Not for 1 year, not for 5 years, for decades. And compounding works both ways. Investment gains compound, but fees compound too. A seemingly small fee difference can eventually cost tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars over a long investing career. Think about that for a moment. The difference between financial freedom and financial stress may not be investment performance. It may simply be cost. This is why reviewing your 401 KEC investment options matters. Look at expense ratios. Look at administrative fees. Look at managed account charges. Look at anything reducing your net returns. Many people spend hours researching investments but never spend 5 minutes reviewing fees. That's backwards, because fees are one of the few variables you can directly control. Market returns are uncertain. Economic conditions are uncertain. Future tax laws are uncertain. But investment costs, those are visible. And lower costs generally leave more money in your pocket. Now, this doesn't automatically mean abandoning a workplace plan, especially if there's an employer match. A match is often too valuable to ignore, but it may influence where additional dollars go after receiving that match. For some workers, contributing enough to capture the full employer match and then directing additional savings toward lower cost accounts can be a reasonable strategy. Again, the answer depends on the individual. There is no universal formula, and that's really the message I want to emphasize throughout this entire discussion. Personal finance is personal. The best strategy for your neighbor may be completely wrong for you. The best strategy for a doctor may be completely wrong for a teacher. The best strategy for a 8-year-old may be completely wrong for a 2-year-old. Context matters. Goals matter. Income matters. Tax situations matter. Future plans matter. That's why broad financial statements often cause confusion. Whenever somebody says everyone should do this, be cautious. Whenever somebody says nobody should do that, be cautious. Financial planning rarely works in absolutes. The most successful investors understand nuance. They understand trade-offs. They understand flexibility. Most importantly, they understand that every financial decision should support a larger life goal. Money itself isn't the destination. It's the tool. The goal is freedom, security, peace of mind, opportunity, time. Those are the things we're really trying to build. And every account you use should ultimately serve those objectives. Let's talk about something that separates good retirement planning from great retirement planning. Tax strategy. This is the point where many savers shift from simply accumulating wealth to intentionally designing how that wealth will be used. And believe it or not, the difference can be enormous. When people first begin saving for retirement, their focus is usually straight contribute money, invest consistently, grow the account. That's exactly how it should be. Early on, simplicity is your friend. But as your assets grow, a new challenge emerges. Not how to build wealth, how to keep more of it. That's where tax planning becomes incredibly powerful. One strategy that has gained significant attention over the last decade is the Roth conversion. For those unfamiliar, a Roth conversion generally involves moving money from a traditional retirement account into a Roth account and paying taxes on the converted amount. At first glance, that sounds strange. Why would anyone voluntarily create a tax bill? Because sometimes paying taxes strategically today can reduce taxes significantly in the future. The key word here is strategically. Nobody wants to pay more tax than necessary. But smart retirement planning often involves choosing when taxes occur rather than simply avoiding them altogether. Imagine a future retiree entering their early 60s. They've left full-time work. Their income is temporarily lower. Social Security hasn't started yet. Required minimum distributions haven't begun yet. This creates what many planners call a tax opportunity window. During that window, they may be able to convert portions of traditional retirement assets into Roth assets while remaining in relatively favorable tax brackets. Done thoughtfully, this strategy can reduce future RMDs, reduce future taxable income, increase tax-free assets, and create greater flexibility later in retirement. But here's where things become interesting. If you already know Roth conversions will likely be part of your future strategy, it may influence where today's contributions go. Why continue stuffing every available dollar into traditional accounts only to later convert substantial portions of those same dollars? For some savers, that approach becomes less efficient over time. Instead, they gradually shift more contributions toward Roth accounts today. This doesn't eliminate the need for future planning, but it may reduce the size of future conversions. And sometimes smaller, more manageable conversions create better long-term outcomes. Think of it like steering a ship. Small course corrections made early are often easier than dramatic corrections later. The same principle applies to retirement planning. The earlier you think about tax diversification, the more options you may have in the future. Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture, because retirement planning isn't really about tax brackets. It's not about Roth conversions. It's not about RMDs. Those things matter, but they're not the ultimate goal. The real goal is creating a retirement that feels comfortable, secure, and flexible. And flexibility deserves far more attention than it receives. Most people spend decades focusing on account balances. They ask questions like, how much have I saved? How much have I earned? How large is my portfolio? Those are important questions, but they're not the only questions. Equally important are questions like, how much control do I have? How many options do I have? How adaptable is my plan? Because retirement rarely unfolds exactly as expected. Health changes. Family situations change. Tax laws change. Markets change. Life changes. And the retirees who navigate those changes most successfully are often the ones with the greatest flexibility. Imagine two retirees again. One has nearly all their assets inside a single account type. The other has assets spread across multiple tax buckets. Which retiree can better adapt to changing circumstances? Which retiree can manage taxable income more effectively? Which retiree can respond more easily to unexpected opportunities or challenges? The answer is clear. Flexibility creates freedom, and freedom is what retirement is supposed to provide. That's why many experienced planners love the concept of the 3 tax buckets: tax-deferred assets, Roth assets, taxable assets. Each bucket serves a different purpose. Each bucket has different strengths, and together they create something powerful: choice. Let's start with tax-deferred assets. Traditional 401ks and traditional IRAs provide immediate tax benefits. They reduce taxable income today. For many workers, especially those in higher tax brackets, that's extremely valuable. Next come Roth assets. These accounts generally require paying taxes up front, but qualified withdrawals later can be tax-free. That can provide enormous flexibility during retirement. Finally, there are taxable brokerage accounts. These often receive the least attention, yet they may be among the most flexible tools available. No contribution limits, no required minimum distributions, no age restrictions, no complicated withdrawal rules. Each account type has advantages. Each account type has disadvantages, but together they create balance. And balance often leads to better outcomes. Think about a 3-legged stool. Remove one leg and stability disappears. The same idea applies to retirement planning. When all of your wealth exists in one category, your options narrow. When wealth is spread strategically across multiple categories, options expand. And options matter a lot, because retirement is rarely a straight line. Some years you may need more income. Other years you may need less. Some years markets may perform exceptionally well. Other years may be challenging. Some years tax laws may favor one strategy. Other years may favor another. The more tools available, the easier it becomes to adapt. This is why thoughtful planning matters so much. Not because planning guarantees perfection, but because planning improves flexibility, and flexibility improves resilience. Now let's address one of the biggest misunderstandings surrounding traditional 401ks. Some people hear discussions like this and conclude, so traditional 401ks are bad. Absolutely not. In fact, that's the exact opposite of the message. I love traditional 401ks. Many financial professionals love traditional 401ks. Millions of retirees have benefited enormously from traditional 401ks. They're powerful, they're effective, they're proven. They've helped ordinary workers build extraordinary wealth. The issue isn't the account. The issue is blindly assuming every dollar should automatically go into the same place forever. That's not a strategy. That's habit. And habits, while useful, should occasionally be reviewed. Think about driving. If you always drive the same route to work, habit can be helpful. But if construction closes a road, continuing down the same path without thinking creates problems. You adjust, you adapt, you choose a better route. Financial planning works the same way. Your circumstances evolve. Your income changes. Your goals change. Your family changes. Your retirement timeline changes. And your saving strategy should evolve as well. What worked perfectly at age 25 may not be ideal at age 45. What worked perfectly at age 45 may not be ideal at age 65. That's not inconsistency. That's intelligent planning. Unfortunately, the internet often struggles with nuance. Extreme opinions attract attention. Balanced perspectives rarely go viral. It's easier to generate clicks by saying, never use a 401k, or always max out your 401k. Both statements are simple. Neither statement is universally true. Real financial planning exists somewhere in the middle, and that's where the best decisions are usually found. Because the truth is that retirement success rarely comes from one perfect account. It comes from a series of thoughtful decisions made consistently over many years. Small decisions, repeated often, that's what creates extraordinary results. It's the worker who contributes every month, the saver who increases contributions after raises, the investor who stays calm during market downturns, the planner who periodically reviews their strategy, the retiree who remains flexible. Those are the people who tend to succeed, not because they discovered a secret, not because they found a loophole, but because they remained intentional. Intentionality is powerful. In a world full of noise, intentionality creates clarity, and clarity creates confidence. So if you take only one lesson from today's discussion, let it be this. Don't ask whether a traditional 401k is good or bad. That's the wrong question. Instead, ask, given my current income, my future income expectations, my tax situation, my retirement timeline, my goals, my savings rate, and my need for flexibility, where should my next dollar go? That's the question that matters, because your next dollar represents a choice between present and future, a choice between different tax treatments, a choice between flexibility and restrictions, a choice between competing priorities. And every one of those choices contributes to the life you're building. The people who achieve financial independence aren't necessarily smarter than everyone else. They don't necessarily earn the highest incomes. They don't necessarily have perfect investment returns. Often, they simply become intentional. They understand where their dollars are going. They understand why those dollars are going there. And they understand how those decisions support the future they want. That's the real secret. Not a specific account, not a specific investment, not a specific strategy. Intentionality. And when you combine intentionality with consistency, something remarkable happens. Wealth grows, options expand, stress declines, confidence increases, and retirement stops feeling like a distant dream. It starts feeling like a realistic destination. So yes, continue saving, continue investing, continue planning, but don't operate on autopilot. Review your strategy periodically. Understand your options. Consider your future tax situation. Think about flexibility. Think about liquidity. Think about the life you're trying to build. Because the best retirement plan isn't necessarily the one with the largest account balance. It's the one that gives you the greatest ability to live life on your own terms. That's what financial freedom has always been about. Not money for money's sake. Not account balances for bragging rights. Not chasing some arbitrary number. It's about creating choices, creating security, creating peace of mind, creating the freedom to spend your time the way you want. And if your saving strategy helps you achieve those things, then it's working exactly as it should. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I genuinely hope this discussion helps you think about retirement planning a little differently. Not through the lens of fear, not through the lens of internet headlines, but through the lens of thoughtful decision making. Because your future deserves more than clickbait. It deserves a plan. And every great plan starts with a simple question. Where should my next dollar go? If you found value in this discussion, consider sharing it with someone who may benefit from it. And remember, financial success isn't built overnight. It's built one smart decision at a time. I'll see you in the next one.